That's an invitation to explain why we mute all.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So just a quick reminder, we will be muting everybody. If you wish to say something, you can hold down the screen, the space bar, and if you set your name so we know what to call you, always helps, keeps it friendly. And if you've got any comments or feedback, please let us know. We have 2 future announcements of events which are coming up next year. Now I'm going to pass this on to Chris to take over.
Thank you. Lovely. Well, welcome everybody to this collections event. As Mike has said, we've got another one planned for February and another one planned for March. One on Tapling and the March one on Philatelic Ephemera. Pleased to introduce Gwynne, Dr. Gwynne Harries. I've got his biography in front of me, but it begins, Gwynne is a bald, overweight old bloke with a beard. So I don't think he wrote it very seriously, but I do know he enjoys real ale, good wine, jazz, poetry. I'll leave out the line about pretty girls, but and as we all know, he's a stamp collector, but he's also a photographer and a radio amateur, and he has a few coins. So he's a collecting polymath in many ways. He's editor of the Scandinavian Contact, which is the journal of the Scandinavia Philatelic Society. And he has a lot of collecting areas, including Norwegian post horns, Cuba, Sudan, Ecuador. So versatile as well. He also manages the websites of 3 societies and is a member of the Association of Philatelic Journalists, the AIJP. So Gwynne has a lot of experience in philately, and he's also in charge of our book reviews for the London Philatelist. And I think with no more ado, it's time to introduce Gwynne. So he's not really bald in fact.
He is. Hello everyone. And lovely joining in today. It makes me feel as if I'm some sort of expert, but as they define the word expert, it says X is an unknown quantity and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So it feels like that this afternoon, perhaps. I was thinking it's a bit like teaching my grandmother to suck eggs. And that got me thinking, where does that phrase come from? And it's actually, they don't know where it comes from, but it does have a lot of origins in different parts of the world. So
Gwynne, just hold on a second. Can you unmute yourself?
back on?
Yes,
Yep.
you are.
Okay. Did you hear anything of what I've just said, or was I completely mute?
You got as far as grandmother sucking eggs and
All right. Okay. Well,
Yes, take it from there.
Okay. It originates from several different countries, and the one I liked best was in Russia, where they have a similar phrase, but it says "teaching your father to have children," which is I'm using a polite version of it there, but it does feel a little bit like that with so many erudite people sitting in front of us today. It isn't rocket science, the writing a book review, but hopefully I'm going to expand on it a bit and tell you a little bit about the background as to why we do it, how we do it, and then some of the pointers of what might be best included in a book review as we go along. The sort of thing will actually help I suppose, me in my job of collating it, editing it down before I pass it on to the editor of LP at various times. So is it all right if I go ahead and screen share that now? Okay, here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. There we are on share. And Here we go. Can everyone see that now? That should be the front page. Good. So it's writing a book review, and it's the thing that everyone knows how to do. My wife is actually a dietitian, and she says everybody knows about diet because we all eat. And obviously from her 40 years experience, that was blatantly not true, but it's certainly perhaps truer in the context of writing a book review. When I started my career as a primary school teacher way back in the 70s, one of the first things you do with a group of children coming back from the summer vacation was you'd get them to do a bit of writing. So they got their brand new exercise book, clean, fresh, new page. They'd written the name on the front, and you'd ask them to tell you a little bit about their holiday, which varied from half a sentence to 3 or 4 sides, depending on the child. But it was the beginning of people reviewing, and it's something that's happened in certainly British education. I imagine across the world that we've had to review at different times, and certainly the work that I do now with students in higher education, book reviews and writing and analysing it and doing the background research is something very common in that setting. So in many respects, writing a review is common to many of us, but the pointers today hopefully will take that a bit further forward. Oh. So I hope it's going to cover the rationale of publishing the book reviews today, and the process and chronology of writing the reviews and their appearance in LP, because that's something that goes a right time. And then finally I want to talk about the basic elements of review in terms of putting the words on paper, and it's only a general guideline because it is something I think needs to come from your heart when you're writing, or your perspective, and we can help standardize that perhaps through the editorial process as we go through. The rationale originally is effectively to help inform members about the acquisitions, not just by way of a list, but more about specific content, so that if you're wondering about a new book, you say, well, what's it like? Do I buy it myself, or can I go and get it? Are there resources within the library that will help us or help you as an individual towards your research in your collection? It also provides, when we get a new book and it comes in, it will provide a contemporaneous snapshot record of the publication's content, which, if we think about, we write a review now, we do keep them, but when they're reviewed, what's that review going to look like in perhaps 20, 40, 50 years time? I mean, that struck me when we were looking at some of the Royal Collection when the Queen opened number 15, and she was being shown books donated by King George, and then you think, being a contemporaneous review of that book, not from the person who'd sent it, but as the actual the book, I wonder how that would view today as we would read it back. So it does provide that contemporaneous snapshot for the future. And the last point I say with tongue in cheek, obviously, if we have a slow month on LP, it helps fill the pages. And I know, as editor of a journal myself, sometimes that is actually a very helpful thing to have. Don't know what's happening with that. So the process and chronology, what is the routine that we follow when we're doing a book review? Well, first of all, the books are received in the library by way of donation. Occasionally we buy them, I believe, but effectively these are from the donations that come through. People give us a book, it goes into the library, and it is processed through, and it's added to our catalogue, and we then have a list of new acquisitions that I can download, or anybody can download, I suppose, if you have access to that part of the system, but you can certainly search for them on the system, and we can download that full list. That list has often, not always, but often is shown in LP. So it shows the acquisitions that come in. So they are mentioned, they are all acknowledged and thanked, and indeed the people who donate them do get a letter of thanks for the donation. I then take that list and I try to seek a reviewer. Now, the thing we must remember is that the reviewers are all volunteers. Nobody gets paid for this, and sometimes it's just impossible to get a review. because nobody wants to do it, or they're bored, or it's not an area they want to do. We do rely on the membership, each one of you doing a review of the books, and sadly there are not very many volunteers coming up, stepping up to the plate. We do have some reviewers who review absolutely everything. That's particularly true for overseas when it's in another language, and we have a number of reviewers who will review books in their language, and they send them through. We don't send them a copy, they source their own, and those reviewers are incredibly valuable, and I would certainly give my thanks to them for that. So when a book is allocated to the reviewer, either because they've requested it, or it's part of a review team member I can call upon, when that's accepted, the book is sent to the reviewer. Now, that only happens in the UK. We don't send our books overseas, which again limits the ability sometimes of our members reviewing books. But we only send them out even in the UK, where they don't have an access to their own copy. And when the review's being done, usually it's about 2 or 3 weeks. We'd like them to have read the book or gone through it and made their observations. And when it's completed, it's only about 250, 300 words. That in handwriting terms is about the size of an A4 sheet. In typewritten font 12, it's probably about half to 2/3 of a sheet. So when that is completed, the review is emailed to me, and then the book or loan copy is returned to the library. That is the process and the chronology. There are things that stray from that from time to time, which is quite difficult. I'll ask you to remember a few points. First of all, that unsolicited reviews are not usually accepted, but there are exceptions to that. That's often because we will get people getting their best mate to review their book, and they send in the unsolicited review and say, oh, here's a review for you. Well, thank you very much, but we haven't even got the book. And we don't review books that we don't have in the library system. All reviews are kept and stored and can be uploaded to Heritage. They're not at the moment, Heritage being the Society's library management system. But hopefully when they are there, they can be accessed by members in the future if they're not searching through back copies of LP, digitally or otherwise. A point that I would stress, because it's sometimes not understood, but book reviews that we write for LP are not meant to be seen as advertising or in any way promotional. And I know a number of authors have occasionally seen that is a benefit, and they sometimes would be a benefit when they have their review. It is something that's very nice for an author with a successful publication. They aren't in any way meant to be as advertising or promotional. They are meant for the benefit of members and researchers wanting to have a clearer understanding of what's available to them in the library, both currently and at a later date. The other thing I would say is that all inquiries and submissions really should be addressed currently through me, as I'm the reviews manager, but they should always come through whoever the review manager is. And I say this, not the president or your best friend on council or the editor of LP or the librarian. And those have all happened to me within the last 12 months. It slows the process down because they end up having to come to me anyway, and it's just another step that you're putting into the system. If the book has been donated, it will be catalogued, and although this last 12 months has obviously there's exceptions to that, but it will be catalogued, it will be on the list, and I will try and seek a review. It doesn't in any way speed it up as you go along, so please always do it and address it through the reviews manager. We tend not to review catalogues. You know, there's another Gibbons catalogue out this year and another one, we tend not to do that because it's just another catalogue. However, there are exceptions to that. For example, as I've shown here, the GB Specialised a couple of years ago changed its format, its organisation, its layout. Essentially, the material was the same, but it was a major reorganisation. And sometimes a review of a catalogue like that is very helpful, as indeed happened with Facet. a couple of years ago. They were major and significant changes. They were very popular catalogues, therefore a review might take place, but generally we don't review catalogues per se. As a rule, we don't review our own publications either, and that's because it's the potential conflict of interest. Because if we've published it as the Royal, surely we're not going to be objective, because we should have gone through all those checks and balances already in terms of the highlights and the content. And indeed, when we publish our own books, we do have extensive advertising, if you like. Oops, sorry. We do have extensive content as part of advertisement, so it acts like a review in its own way, so people can find its content and research through the advertising information. So guidelines for writing books and publications in the LP. Books have been received and processed, so potential reviewers are contacted, as I've said. A lot of reviewers like to have a book that's sent to them within their own specialist field, and obviously that gives them a deeper insight into their explanations, which is fine. However, there is a case for reviewing a book in an area that isn't your specialism. That's partly to do with how accessible is it. If you know the jargon and the detail of your particular subject, and you look at the book, you can comment on that, and perhaps sometimes you might be overly critical. I'm not saying you would be if you're objective, but it's possible, because you say, well, they said this and that and the other in an oversimplified way. Now, as a specialist and an experienced person in that subject area, you may feel that, and that's true, but is it accessible to somebody new coming into that area of philately? When I'm recently rejuvenating my collection of French material, and I've hoarded it over the years. I put it to one side and I'd get round to it one day, and that day has arrived through COVID, and I'm suddenly finding new terminology and phraseology. And when I look at the literature that's available, there's easier literature to guide me through and help me develop my own knowledge and experience and expertise, and I think that's quite important. So having a reviewer that is not a specialist in the area can be a helpful review. So it's something that people may want to think about. Challenge yourself and have a look at something that you don't know very much about. I mean, if you have a look, a couple of years ago I reviewed several books that were written in Mandarin, and I don't speak Mandarin other than a few choice words that are important for the niceties of greeting, but I do have access to people who can speak Mandarin. They were able to give me extra guidance and support around the title pages and look at the content. I could look at the pictures, and I looked at how accessible it was for me as an individual, as well as stating the content. So following something that you're not entirely familiar with is quite a useful way forward. The dispatched review copy can be collected in person, or it can be as preferred by yourself, and we move forward that way. Timing. In order to keep reviews as current as possible, we'd like it returned in about 3 or 4 weeks from when you've been given the title. Sooner is great, and I can give you more. But when you do finish a review, the book needs to be returned at that time as well. Please try not to exceed 300 words. If longer, I'd be likely to edit it down, and even if I send something that's longer because it needs to be, the editor of LP may well edit it down. It depends on the material concerned. Having said that, there are exceptions when longer reviews will be undertaken on particular works where appropriate. The little graphics, by the way, there might be a prize for those people who can say who the graphics are representing. There isn't a template for writing a review of anything specific, but it's essentially just your words, an account of the book as per the ideas detailed later on in the presentation. Bibliographic information, you don't need to provide that, as I take all of that and add it to it, linking in with heritage. So we use the heritage details to title up any book, so you don't need to put that in. Similarly, we don't sometimes, particularly when it's an unsolicited review, they often put the purchase price, the availability, etc., etc., etc. Again, that isn't needed. We do have a record of that on Heritage because we take it from the book itself, but we don't actually need that as part of the review because we are reviewing a book that the library has. If anybody wants to get that information, you can scrutinize Heritage, or you could even email in or visit the library just to request what that information might be, but it doesn't generally form part of the review. When it comes in that way, we do just remove it at that particular point. So format and return your review. A Word document is preferred, but it's not essential. If you can send that review to bookreviews@rpsl.org.uk, that comes to my inbox because I'm in that post currently, and then you return your copy of the book, which can be returned in person or by post to a member of the library team. And I say, but in person, that's COVID restrictions permitting, and returns postage will be provided upon request. So the starting point of writing a review. First of all, you don't have to know everything about the content of the book. Again, this comes back to the point I made about somebody reviewing a book that in an area that you may not be 100%. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know everything about its structure or the specialism that you're commenting on. You don't have to detail all of your thoughts and observations, because sometimes when you review a book, loads of things come to mind. Oh, they could have done this, could have done that, all the other things. Just stick to a few of the key things that you think are the most important. So as I say, you don't have to write everything in 300 words. Just try and say enough so other members and researchers can decide if they want to read it or make reference to it themselves. It's a taster, it's a synopsis. It's like the flap on the inside of a book when you buy one. So in general terms, the things that you should consider. Primarily, what is the book about? You can look at the title here, really. What is the subject matter? If it's the postal history of the Gambia, or the history of the penny black, does the book talk about that? Is that what is your stating the content of the book? Highlight the main sectional content in brief. What are the main points the author is trying to make? Use the index. Use the contents pages. Look at those too. I know Nicola, if you ever are not sure about that, have a look. I know she's even mentioned it to me. She's very keen on index and contents of the book. What is the theme, the aim, the content, or the message of the book? That's slightly different from what the book's about, because if we had a book on the postal history of the Gambia, that's big subject, but in what is this particular book trying to address in something like that as a title? When you've looked through the book, does it actually address its own stated aim? I mean, there are many books that I've seen, they talk about something and they go off completely as a tangent. That's true certainly in some of the work that I see with my students. They start a research thesis and they go off completely to tangent, and their final thesis is something very different, and then they have to change the title, which always upsets them a bit. But does it address its own stated aim as per the title? In your opinion, does it add to the overall subject knowledge of its aim? There are quite a few books that I've seen that come out and they're only really rehashing what's been said before, or the contents that's been had before, and it's like a summary of a lot of books together. So it's of interest to know whether it adds to the subject knowledge that its aim is trying to address. And I suppose, what do you like about the book? That can mean all sorts of things. Does it present in an interesting way? In your view, is the book accessible to a non-specialist in the field? Do you think? That comes back to a point I raised earlier. Does the content seem to flow naturally? If there are illustrations, do they add or confuse? From a personal point of view, I'm very much a visual learner. I don't find written instructions that easy. I would much prefer to follow a set of pictures. Hence, I can build IKEA furniture quite easily. But if you wrote those instructions down, I wouldn't bother. I'd just try and work it out myself. So do the illustrations, add or confuse. And what is the feel of the book? Is the paper quality, the finish? I mean, you don't have to mention all of these things, obviously, but it's as a specialist publication, does it feel right? Those key elements are quite important when looking at reviewing a book, in my view. Now, this is bound to be the case with philately, but does the book jargon or superfluous tangential substance? It's bound to contain jargon because we're philatelists. We're right. Jargon is often seen as a negative thing. For me, I quite like jargon in terms of it means you can communicate in a specialist way in your professional field with people of a like-minded interest. What the trouble with jargon is it can be exclusive by moving people away who don't understand and just blocking them out. So it has to be careful. Is the jargon or is the phraseology explained, or does it go way off on a tangent that has no particular merit? Most books that we're going to read are likely to be factual based books. We're not really likely to have very many books that are of a novel. This is the only example in terms of the picture, the only ones I could find that was close to being a novel. The Rise and Fall of the Stamp King, Dr. Paul Singer. It is actually you could make a good biopic out of it, I think, but if you've never read it, it's quite entertaining. Apparently he knew absolutely nothing about philately and made millions out of it and then went bust. An interesting book. But describe the book. Is it interesting, memorable, entertaining, instructive? Why? Provide your reactions to the book. Your reaction, this is the point really about it's a novel, because they tend to be factual based books and non-fictional material. A reviewer should try to provide an overview of what the book is about. If the author is making opinions or statements, what do you agree with and why? Now, if it's a seminal work, they may be breaking new ground and you may or may not agree with it, but it may be new evidence. So it's hard to challenge that, perhaps, unless you know differently. So if you disagree with something and why, you need to obviously back that up. You can't just say there's millions of votes being fraudulently counted unless you provide the evidence. And the same thing is here. You can't say you disagree with it unless you provide the evidence to back up your assertion in terms of whether you agree or disagree with an author's opinions. What possibilities does the book suggest? Explain what matters does the book leave out? So there may be key and important issues in a particular book that you want to comment on because they didn't actually include them. We're really getting into sort of in-depth issues here. Provide an overview, including, if appropriate, any paraphrases and quotations of the book's thesis and its primary supporting points. Then you've got to draw everything together. Where appropriate, relate your review to other books or authors if that's necessary and appropriate. Support your comments for and against the content by bringing examples from other books and other writing. This is where your knowledge is useful because you'll have your own research notes, you have your own books, your own philatelic library, your own interest. Try and bring any knowledge you have of that to see if there's anything in comparison you can make with this particular book. Tie those points together that you've raised in your review, and if appropriate, say how well, in your opinion, the book has achieved its goal. Remember, this is an opinion. Your review is your view, and other people may disagree, but it's about what the possibilities are suggested by the book, what the book has left out, how does the book compare with others, and specifically, what do you feel and what points are not convincing, if any, indeed, that you may agree with all of it. And remember, as Mark Twain said, Get your facts first, then you can distort them as you please. It's about you presenting that review as your view. And of course, all of that in 250 to 300 words, really ready to blow your mind. It seems like a lot. I've tried to present something today that has encompassed so much, and you're going to put into 250, 300 words. I suppose it's going through what I've suggested and picking out the salient points for you on that particular review. And some of it will be used, some of those points you won't be using. So thank everyone for joining in today. It's seeing all the faces and from around the world. It's nice to see that other people are looking in. I want to thank Nicola for encouraging me to do this. Otherwise, I'd never have put it together. The truth of the matter is, if you've got any questions, ask Nicola, not me, because she's always there. But no, seriously, I will help and obviously go through if people have questions online at any time, not just at the end of this seminar, but also to Mike today, who's who's been stalwartly making all of this possible by sharing and double checking and testing. But remember, if all the communications to do with book reviews, that's the email address. Not librarian@rpsl.org.uk, not president@rpsl, but bookreviews@rpsl.org.uk. Ask me, send submissions to me, say yes when I say, can you review this book? I'll be very, very pleased if you can do that, so that in build the number of reviews we have, which currently I have none. I have a lot of books which I'm about to send and ask for people to do a review now that we've got a little bit more movement with access to number 15 and that the backlog of books has been processed. So I look forward to being inundated with requests to do reviews and lots of acceptances as we go along. But my thanks to Nicola and Mike today for their hard work in doing that, and also to Chris for that introduction, which I don't recognise, I'm afraid, but there we go. And for other information, you can follow the Society on our Facebook. The Facebook page has been amalgamated, and it's now at Royal Phil Soc London, and you can go on there and see a lot of updates of information, and RPSL Twitter, of course. With the photograph there, I believe is Frank Walton's favourite photograph of the Royal. It reminds me of the heritage, the heritage catalogue that we have, which has a very similar photograph of the stairs at the Vatican. And finally, our copyright. So thank you very much this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Over to, is it Chris or Mike? I don't know.
It's Chris. Before we go any further, we have some questions on chat. If you have other questions or questions that you wish to raise, can you type them in on chat and I'll go through them shortly. I wonder, would it be helpful, having had the point of view of a reviewer, just to ask either Frank Walton or Steve Jarvis if they would like to make any comment as an editor of the Royal of the Royal's London Philatelist. Frank?
Yeah, it works better if I unmute. Right, thank you. That was an interesting, a quick hospital pass I wasn't expecting, but thank you. I take it Tony Barr's not on the call. Anybody see Tony?
That's why I've asked you. And
thank
Steve.
you.
No, Tony's not on the call.
My stance is that book reviews are essential. Let me talk first of all to private capacity rather than as an LP editor. I love book reviews. It's one of the first things I look for when I open the LP each month. And what I'm really after is information about which people in the world have written books which I might want to acquire. So I need to be told of the existence of a new book. And to my mind, the existence of a new book is actually much more important to me than reading 86 pages of what the book's all about. So I personally would endorse entirely everything Gwynne said. In getting the information out there, the book has been published is essential. I do actually like to know how I can get hold of it. But normally Google sorts that out for you nowadays. So is it essential to get the name and address and who you pay the check, write the check payable to? Probably not. However, yes, I thoroughly enjoy the LP reviews, and as an editor, which has now come back to the question I was invited to comment upon, I find them fantastic because normally these things aren't absolutely time critical. And as an editor, I can fill either half a page, 1 page, 3 pages, or whatever, as long as I've got a good stock of these things. And they're a dream as far as an editor is concerned, because you can just fill up the last 1.5 pages of each month's edition. Gwynne and the people who did it before him have provided a fantastic service to the Society by feeding the editorial team with that, or the editorial team, the editor, with that information. And the same is true of library acquisitions, which I haven't been seen recently in the LP. I don't think that comes through Gwynne, but you know, I too do like to know what's been added to the library. That's not just new books, of course. I do know with the recent massive inundations of the library contents, that'd be quite tricky to actually print all of that. But nevertheless, I think the library news pages in the LP are fantastic, and I won't say I turn to them first, but it's not far off the first thing I read.
Thanks very much, Frank. And Steve, have you got anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, yes, I agree with everything Frank said. I think the key thing is making sure that the reviews are crisp and holding to the 250, 300 words, and that they don't drag on too long. Sort of people have to focus their minds on getting their message across about the value of the book or the information in the book in as few words as possible.
Splendid. Thanks very much. We do have some questions. This is from Keith Burton. Questions to Gwynne. So if you're reviewing a book on a subject outside your knowledge base, how can you talk about what a book adds to the subject knowledge? Does this matter?
It does matter, but can you hear me at the moment? Am I still on, not on mute? Yeah. The issue is that we're philatelists, and the subject matter is about philately in essence. And there are some times when I can't get somebody who's a specialist in that field, but the non-specialist will have knowledge of the philatelic content, even if it may not be the precise detail of a particular overprint issue and the in that the minutiae of that sort of content. But so a more general review can be written, but it would come across as more of a general review rather than a specialist review. So it does matter, but at the same time, having a review that is sufficiently in depth from a non-subject specialist in that particular area also has a validity, in my view. But in all the time I've been doing the book reviews, I've only perhaps had 3 or 4 reviews like that that have come into the into my inbox and that have been published. In a way, that again comes to the next question from Ian, where he said, to what extent should a reviewer assess the factual accuracy of the content? If you're a specialist, you can potentially pass an outside comment on that level. If you're a non-specialist, you can't. But I wasn't suggesting that you should have to comment on the factual accuracy in every single review. What I've tried to say is these are some of the wide-ranging issues that you might want to cover in a review, but you don't have to do it all. It's a matter of these are key things that could appear in a review if you were doing so. So there is a balance on both sides, and the reason I have to say that we would take a review on that is because there are insufficient members and volunteers to come forward on some key areas of philately. They just sit there and say, oh no, it's not my area, I'm not doing anything, and they end up doing nothing at all ever in the terms of book reviews, and that is obviously entirely their choice. I'm not critical of that, other than sometimes it's a real struggle to get books reviewed.
Shall we go on with Nick Rust's question? Would it be helpful to reference previous works with connections to the subject and comment on how valid they remain or not, given that they may have been published much earlier? He says, I would find this useful. I often read an LP review and get interested in a topic and want recommendations on other useful reading material in the area.
I think that, Nicholas, I think that's a very important point. A review can in my view, can contain that sort of cross-referencing, which is what I was trying to imply in my presentation. Generally, they don't appear that way because it's such a short review. However, there's absolutely no reason why. I mean, presumably the book and the publication has got some of those bibliographic references in it, and would be useful then for you to have a look. But if you've got interested in it, then as a member, borrow the book and have a look at those cross-references, because again, I think that is part of what the review is doing. If it's stimulating you to read and interested in the subject in the book, then the book should have those cross-references in, rather than detailing them in full, because trying to detail them in full in the 3 words is actually very difficult. And I think Steve Jarvis's point about it trying to be as succinct in that 300 words as possible is very important. So yes, it would be useful. It is something that could be done, but if it can be done in 300 words, that's okay. I would suggest, though, that within the review, it could say something like, it is a well cross-referenced piece of research, and would be recommended to readers to have a look at the other material available through that.
Can I just pick up a later question before I come back to Charles's? Abhishek Buwalka, he says, for the sake of the historical record, I would like book reviews to contain bibliographic information like numbers printed, formats brought out, ordinary, deluxe, etc., the price of the book on publication. If necessary and not printed inside, the reviewer can get the information from the author. Would you like to comment on that, Gwynne?
I understand what Abhishek's saying there. It would be useful. The reason that we're not doing, or we haven't done that, is number one, because of space and content and the space available overall. But that information, I'm going to see if Nicola nods now, should be actually on the heritage itself. So
yeah, any information like that, if it's been if it's either provided with the book or, you know, we've later found that out, we would put it on heritage. So if someone to come to us and wanted the information, we'd have it. But as you say, for space, we don't usually run it in the report for either the reviews or the acquisitions list, because it would double the length of the acquisitions list probably.
So within that thank you, Nicola. So within that information is held on heritage, and therefore it's about logging into the website, looking at heritage, and find that information there, Abhishek. If there are books without that information, then presumably, because we don't have it in the first place, as part of the review.
I think that's a question which I'm sure we may come back to, but I think it's an interesting question. The one from Charles is, how critical can you be in a review? What if the index is rubbish, for example?
I think you should be honest in the review that you're doing, and if you want to be critical of a particular book, I think that is quite appropriate. It's a matter of how harsh you are. But if you think the book is an absolute waste of recycled paper, it doesn't grace the shelves of a prestigious organisation like the Royal, rather than actually saying that, it might be worth ringing me up and saying, look, I can't find anything good to say about this book, and then we would just pretend that we haven't had a reviewer, or seek another reviewer on the QT to see if they could be more benign. But I think, in fairness, it should be balanced, and if there are elements, as you just highlighted there, like it's not a good index, I'm sure there are ways of saying that within the 300 words that will give a flavour of the book at that critical level. It does bring me to another point, because something I heard somebody say the other day. What about writing a review and you don't like the person that's written the book? And how does that influence you in writing the review? Well, again, I may not know that, but if any review comes in that is overly critical, or indeed shows a certain personal critique other than for the words on the book itself, and tend to be more about the author, those tend to get edited out, not to be in any way censoring it, but it's about the diplomacy of writing an objective review.
Thank you. Scott Tiffany asks, do we ever send a book out to more than one reviewer? And if so, how do you determine which review will be published? Is there a process for this?
There isn't a documented process. It has happened, and it does happen. When I sometimes publish a list, these are the books I need reviewing. Sometimes people forget to tell me, well, I'll review that one. And I end up getting 2 or even 3 reviews from on the same book from 3 people independently. What I've done in those cases is published all the reviews together as a series of reviews in the same edition for the same book. It was the last time I did it was, I think it must have been probably about 2 years ago now, and 2 people did the review. And it was actually quite interesting to see both perspectives, both drawing the same sort of conclusions, but both giving a slightly different perspective as how they came there. And that was actually quite helpful. So occasionally books are done that way. Some reviews are done that way. But it's never planned for, because if I could do, I would, but it's hard enough to get one review, never mind getting 2 people to review it. So I want to have that problem rather than not at all.
Thank you. David Beach, welcome, David. He asks, is it wise to show a review to an author before publication of the review?
We've never done that. Where it could be deemed to be overly critical, and somebody could get really upset about that, that's when we've discretion is the better part of valor, and we've not dealt with the review at all, and not used it. To show a review to an author, this book is now already out in the public domain, they've already had it reviewed. I don't think any of our reviews should be published that are overly critical. Neither should we publish them if they're overly over the top about how wonderful it is.
Yeah.
I
Benign
think
was the word you used.
Sorry, what?
Benign was the word you used.
That's right, yeah, benign the word. I think a review should be objective. What the definition for objective is at any one particular time is really up to both the reviewer and then the editorial team behind that. And it has the double edge on that, in as much that I go through them, I collate them, I read them all, I do edit them, sometimes just to bring them into the word count when they're overly long. Secondly, I correct them for grammar, which is part of the role. I'm not criticizing anybody for that, because we can all struggle. Then when I've sent the finished product to Tony, he of course will do the same where necessary. We do have this double check to show that things don't get overly critical or overly benign. So I think this is about the balance and being objective, whatever that is at any particular time.
Thanks very much. Eric Hutton, it writes, it's more of a comment than a question, I think. Outside of philately, he writes, I've seen very small percentage of book reviews done by more than one person, thinking this might be useful to have both a beginner and an expert in the field review something, but only for, say, major contributions to a subject area. I know it goes back on an earlier question, but what about this idea of a beginner and an expert, sort of two levels of review?
I think there's a great deal of merit in that. The trouble is, by the time people boil, they're often not beginners. They're already at a certain level of interest. And as I come back to the point, it's hard enough finding one reviewer, never mind finding two, and then finding two at either end of a spectrum will be nigh on impossible. It's a nice situation. I would like to do that potentially sometimes, though I'm not entirely sure in the long run how that would benefit the members as it stands, because this is supposed to be about a flavour for the record, for people's back reference of the resources that we have available.
Thanks. Ari Mahonen asks, do we accept book reviews which deal with non-English books, like those written in Swedish and Finnish? And this isn't the answer, but I've just got this book, which I don't think we have in the library, which is on the letter post service from the United Kingdom to Scandinavia before July 1875. Well, I'm planning to give it to the Royal in due course, but I'm also planning to write a review on it. It is entirely in German, but it's an extraordinarily good book. So, Gwynne.
Yes, we do, and we have done. As I mentioned in my presentation, I reviewed one that was in Mandarin. I think we only review books that we have in the library. So if the book that may be in Swedish or Finnish or whatever language is in the library, and we do have very many foreign language books in the library, if it's in the library and we can get a reviewer to do that, yes, we would accept it, and the review would be published in English. So that is something that we certainly do. In the case there with Chris, with his book, when it's donated to the library, it becomes an acquisition, and we would accept his review with it, because obviously he's read it, he's not the author, and that would be a very helpful review. The nice thing is we have that now recorded, that Chris is going to do a review on that book, so he's not going to get away from it. I look forward to receiving it.
You've got to wait for me to translate the first 60 pages, which is the pages that deal with Denmark. So.
Yeah.
Gwynne, yeah, just to add to that, I think in a way it's very useful, because then it gives people who maybe don't read the language of the book, it gives them a brief synopsis as to what it's about, and if they need to investigate further. Yeah,
absolutely critical. That's so. Yes, the simple answer is yes, we do, where we can get them, and when we have reviewers who are willing to do that. Obviously, if it's a foreign language book, we can't, and we have the book, we can't send it out, so we would rely on the foreign language reviewer, if they're not living within the UK, that they are able to have access to that book within their own country. I will mention Luca in Italy now, who he does all our Italian the books that we have in the library in Italian. He reviews them all for us, because he has access to the books in Italy, and he sends them in on a regular basis, which is fantastic.
And Beata did a synopsis of a book
recently, that's right, she did,
in German as well, and she's given the synopsis, because it's a lengthy synopsis, in English.
Yes, and that was written in this last edition of LP, to answer Ari's question.
Right, what percentage, this is from Frank Walton, what percentage of newly published books donated to the RPSL library are reviewed in the LP?
I could give you a percentage, but as they say, 79.68% of all statistics are made up on the spot. So I actually don't know what the percentage is, Frank, but within a year, I will probably, we probably have about 48 reviews under a normal year, about 48 reviews done or completed within a year. Perhaps let's say 50 for a round figure, and yet we get considerably more books than that donated to the library. That it's very difficult to perhaps have more than that in terms of the space within LP. But it is a very small percentage compared with the number of books we receive, unfortunately. And that's basically because we can't get hold of reviewers. People don't, even when they accept a book, that quite often they never bother responding again, and you don't hear from them. It's quite challenging. I've got a list of regular reviews, 12 on the list. I sometimes search further than that, people promise, and it doesn't always come to fruition, unfortunately.
Thank you. Well, Keith Burton says, can a non-current reviewer have a trial run with a critical back comment, a comment back, i.e. a review of the reviewer, in order to see if they wish to continue being a reviewer?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, one of the key things that I've always tried to do is encourage people to come along and have a go. It isn't as difficult as you might think. There are lots of challenges along the way, but it can be extremely good fun and very rewarding. And then, of course, you see your name in print in a small sort of way, which is actually a proud moment, and people shouldn't underestimate. You know, you've made a contribution. This is a very valid contribution, important. But before it comes to that, if you're a new reviewer and want that sort of feedback, yeah, that's part of the work that I do. I mean, that's what I've done professionally and have done for years and still do. And it's about holding hands to make sure you know, COVID restrictions of Zoom are permitting, that you help hold somebody's hand while they learn to do that and build up their own skills and confidence. So yes, absolutely. If you fancy having a go and want to talk it through, then that's brilliant.
So, Gwynne, you'll give them a metaphorical hand.
I certainly will, for what that's worth.
Ari says, well, what if he knows a remarkable new book which is still not in the library? Can he recommend it to be reviewed?
Yes, he can, but if it's not in the library, there's no point in us reviewing it. This is about reviewing the books for the membership in our location. But go on then, go ahead, Nicola.
What I would say is if you let the library know, and then we would see if we could try and get hold of a copy by contacting the publisher or the author, or of course, you know, someone could donate a copy to the library as well.
Yeah. So yes, if you know of somebody, then please do let us know. Say, look, this is a great book. That's the part of the unsolicited review. Times, if you know of a book, get in touch with me. Let us know about that. If we, then we'll see if we get hold of it, or perhaps you know the author, in which case you could say send them a copy and we'll get a review. And that's actually quite important.
Okay. Ed Croft says, do you send putative reviewers a list of the guidelines set out in your slides? He says that would be helpful and could encourage more people to do reviews.
I haven't done, because the review that I've listed is new. The chronology is something that it was sent out when I get a new reviewer. So they have a list of, this is the process you follow. These are the contents, excuse me. These are the contents. The fact that we've done this now in part was promotion to see if we could encourage more people to have a look, and indeed when it goes on the website, people then may look into it further and say, oh, I wouldn't mind having a go. But I would ask all of you, please, to try and consider doing a review, and also encouraging other members, saying, oh, do you think you could have managed, of this? I mean, Frank's been good at that. When there have been books that I haven't been able to review, Frank has actually said, oh, contact this person, contact that person. And I think that's something that's quite, you know, important. So yes, I can certainly send this out to them, and the content and the detail of it, it will be available on the website. Yes, hopefully more people will be inspired by doing it.
Okay, Frank also points out that when we are looking at fellowship, contribution to the society is taken into account, and, and that writing book reviews is one such contribution.
Yeah.
Ari says, he speaks he can read every Scandinavian language except for Icelandic, and I have some sympathy there. He wants to be a reviewer, so how does he volunteer? I think he just writes an email to Book Reviews at, doesn't he?
That he does indeed. Just send me an email now, so I've got your contact, Ari, and then we'll work together on that. I tended to have done the Scandinavian ones because of my own interest in Scandinavian philately. If I haven't, I've sent them to Chris or Berta or Eric Keefe from time to time. But we do have Scandinavian books that would be really good to follow some of those through, and your support would be very, very welcome. Thank you. So just email me on bookreviews@rpsl.org.uk, and I will get straight back to you.
Yeah. And Ari, we've got your book in the library, I think. So lastly,
has it been reviewed?
I think it has. Lastly, Luca says, "Thank you, Gwynne, for the thanks. I've got no more questions." Oops. No, I've got no more questions here from anybody else. And I think that takes us to 3 o'clock, which is the sort of target hour. I think it's been a very informative session, and it's been a very sticky session because 52 people started and 52 people finished. They're beginning to leave now. So I think it's actually been quite very helpful to all of the audience that are here. As Gwynne has said, if you want to be a book reviewer, you write to bookreviews@rpsl.org.uk, and we look forward to seeing more assistance. And we are limited only by our book reviews. I have one last question. It's why don't we publish book reviews on the website?
I suppose it takes away from LP, but that's nice. Thank you. Yeah. I think that it's about another page. There's no reason why we couldn't. I think there'd be a great deal of merit in that. Sometimes I find that websites often replicate physical journals, and that makes the journal less important in terms of researching back copies, because a lot of the key information is then on a website. The problem is websites do change, and they become bulky and heavy, and material is archived so that we can publish them at that moment, but they lose efficacy after archiving of the content, whereas the hard copy journal is maintained, so the record is maintained and accessible. But there's no reason why we couldn't, but that's not my decision to deal with that.
And we have been looking at putting it on through Heritage, because you can add it to the Heritage record, and then it could be uploaded that way.
Yeah,
Nick,
I mean, the problem is...
Can I intervene, Chris?
Yes, please, Frank.
One of the original ideas myself and Steve kicked around, it must be 5 or 6 years ago now, was adding book reviews onto Heritage. Because sometimes we get some very long book reviews, which we couldn't print in the LP. But going back to what Abhishek was talking about, that there are endless attributes which I know are on Heritage, but what I'm not certain of is whether those attributes are actually refreshed onto the website and can be inquired by members. So that's maybe something we ought to take away as a to-do, to see exactly what we could put on Heritage and how that actually filters through onto the website so that members can actually access that information. And myself and Steve got really carried away at one point, and we're talking about cutting old book reviews out of LPs going back decades, if not centuries, and actually appending those onto Heritage so they could be reviewed.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed.
Steve wanted to
Steve
say
Jarvis
something.
has got a comment as well.
Well, it was just a follow-on from that. We talked about putting them directly on the public website, but we decided the better route was to put them through Heritage, and then there'd be an automatic feed whenever we did refreshes from Heritage. So
yeah, and then I think it's one of our jobs in the improving of the website So it's on the list, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Chris,
okay, so
Chris,
yes, Mark.
thank you. Obviously, Steve and I and Nicola take care of the website, amongst others. What I would say, as a point of fact, is that, of course, the LP in its digital form is available through the website. So every book review that's in the LP is also therefore on the website. Some of the attributes that have been spoken about, such as print runs, which is something that Abhishek commented on, I'm not sure that I've ever seen those sorts of attributes being recorded in the catalogue, but maybe I've overlooked those. I'm not saying they're not there, but I haven't noticed them. But I totally agree with Nicola's remark about it is a work in progress. What we add to the website clearly is what we add, as in it's an addition, it's moving forward, it's changing it. But I would definitely echo Gwynne's point, which is that what ends up on the Royal's website is by its nature ephemeral. We don't leave it up there forever and a day. Whereas if something's published in a printed book, as long as those printed books, in this case the LP, are around, long term, that there is the longevity of the information.
Thanks very much. I was thinking really that if we've got, say, space for, say, 50 or 60 reviews in the course of a year, and we have an enthusiastic team of reviewers producing 100 reviews in a year, it would be a pity to lose the reviews. But that's not a matter for now, and it's not really a matter for me. It was just a piece of curiosity. Was there any, Steve, did you want to say something? And Charles, if you unmute yourself, please.
He's written a question, Chris.
Yeah. There it is. Sorry, I should know the answer to this, but does the annual index to the LP list the book reviews?
I should know the answer to this as well. I'm afraid I don't.
I don't know.
I don't think it does, but I'm hoping Frank or Steve could tell us.
I remember. I'd go and have a look.
I think it used to, but it does really depend on the person who makes up the index each year. But I'm afraid nowadays indexes are becoming less and less useful, in my opinion, of the LP printed annually, simply on the grounds that everybody uses the search engine anyway. And if you just search the text of the LP, then you'll find the answer in a review immediately.
I mean, searching the Global Philatelic Library and searching the LP and searching the Royal's catalogue actually brings up a lot of information. Some would say almost too much to manage, but nonetheless, it is there, and it's a great research tool in its own right. If you want to find out what there is on a particular topic, both our catalogue and the Global Philatelic Library's catalogue are extraordinarily helpful.
One thing I would say, Charles, is that I keep a monthly record of what is published, because I will often submit reviews well in advance, not always, but I am known to do them well in advance of publication. So I list what has been sent, and then when it appears, so I have an index for myself on that, just so I know where I'm at. It's my record keeping,
and then that's put on Heritage as well. We keep a record of that on Heritage.
Right, thank you.
I've dug out the 2016 index, which I did. It doesn't seem to list the book reviews.
Well, there's something else to think about. So Nicola has just thanked Gwynne, which the Diolch yn fawr, she says, which probably means something nice. And
it means she's buying the beer next time.
I was going to say, yeah, that means it's her round. I'm sure that's what
I don't think that's true. So I think we're at the end of this this session. I'd like to thank very much Gwynne for his contribution, for the contributions of all of you, and for the constant support we get from people like Mike Hoffman and Mark Bailey in giving us the technical wherewithal to put these events on. I think it's been extremely helpful. I hope we get some new reviewers, and you can stick. You can hold me to doing a review on this particular book, but it might take me 6 months. I just wish you all well, and thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Gwynne. Excellent presentation. Very enjoyable. Thank you.